bulletin is led by this story. President Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa says he was unaware of many facets of the state capture project. He's currently testifying at the state capture inquiry in his capacity as head of state of the country. Now let's discuss what's emerged with political analyst Booysen and also Daniel Silk. Prof, let me start with you. Good afternoon. What stood out for you? This is day 2 of the president at the state capture inquiry. What has stood out for you so far?
Unambiguously, the fact that there is a continuous interrogation, to put it in not so diplomatic terms, of how much exactly President Cyril Ramaphosa knew, how much there was their complicity, how much acquiescence there was. And then we see the continuous fallback on his side that with expressions like he was not alive to a certain occurrence or he wouldn't be able to pinpoint the exact details, etc. So he's not been doing much to help get out of the way all of those impressions that he might have known more than what he acknowledges. And of course, a big part of this is exactly as you alluded to in your main headline, the security apparatuses and the State Security Agency. And the Pretorius for the Commission repeatedly referred to the fact that there has been evidence, 2011, 2014, for example, of the Presidential Protection Service being formed, of that being armed, of members of that force not being accounted for, and investigations into it not being concluded. And so there was almost a continuous allusion to the fact that Cyril Ramaphosa and his government might or probably did not do enough to stop that rot, has been knowledgeable of it, and yet we have not seen the action. And then the very specific point that there might very well have been a link between that kind of force and this continuous operation and the violence and unrest we saw last month.
Daniel, let me bring you in. Good afternoon. What has stood out for you? The Prof is mentioning the continuation of that so-called interrogation to establish whether or not the president knew certain things, and the whole issue of the state security apparatus. For you, what else stood out?
Yeah, thank you. Look, I broadly agree. I do think, though, that we're seeing the president continue to really tread very carefully in terms of how he phrases the narrative. I mean, he really has really not laid the blame at the door of anybody specifically. There was a bleak reference to former President Zuma in the latter part of the testimony this morning, which I think was very important. But really, in terms of labeling those who are to blame, labeling those that are the malfeasance over this last decade or so, there's been absolutely no desire to do that. And what stands out for me is that the president really wants to allow the commission to complete its work, and he wants the commission ultimately to ascribe a degree of blame, to obviously recommend what follow-ups and what legal consequences there will be for certain individuals. He doesn't want to take the political responsibility himself. And it's a little bit, I suppose, like issues relating to the Secretary General of the ANC, Mr. Magashule. The president ultimately would like the courts to make the decisions on his behalf. When you've got a very awkward position as president of South Africa and you have to unravel this level of malfeasance, patronage, state capture, well, you need the help of third-party institutions. And in a sense, the State Capture Commission and the courts are really that. And that's really what stands out for me. The president trying to effectively deflect responsibility for issues and also deflect, in a sense, the actions that need to be taken. And that's what stood out for me.
Yeah, but that's going to be a difficult one to do, Professor Booysen, because the commission, like all other commissions, is going to make findings and then it's going to make recommendations. Who must implement those recommendations? The president himself. Is he in a smart way maybe preparing for an easier task ahead for himself?
Well, in the first place, he acknowledged that getting correction and continuing on this, as he continuously refers to, we know that's quite common in ANC parlance, the self-correction, the renewal of the ANC. That he seems to be holding out as the to the ANC and its future, and therefore he argues that it is absolutely non-negotiable that he will be doing more. But I also see exactly a lot of kicking of the can down the road. Even Judge Zondo referred to the fact that it is quite possible that a commission report like this could be taken on review, and there could be long legal processes about contesting the contents of it that could still follow, and that it would perhaps be inappropriate or way too long a time period to wait for the commission report for the president to be activating certain necessary steps. So we saw typically Cyril Ramaphosa, his presidency, he likes other agencies with his commissions or courts or the broader ANC structures to take very important and often contested decisions for him. And in this case, there was a wake-up call from Judge Zondo himself that this could be too far down the road. And as evidence leader Paul Pretorius also remarked when we came to the State Security Agency and the malfeasance that was occurring there and the total dysfunctionality that is in place there, that this is urgent. There is an urgent need for action, and that the process is kind of probably not wait, definitely not wait, actually, for the commission report to be finalized.
Waste of time, waste of 1 billion rand, that came up from the mouth of Cyril Ramaphosa himself when he was testifying earlier to say that we must make sure that this whole exercise, those were his words, has not been a waste of money, about 1 billion rand spent so far, and a waste of anybody's time, including that of the acting Chief Justice himself, Raymond Zondo. What does it look like currently, Daniel? Is it too early to call it like that? Because it's day 2 and we're not getting a lot more details about what actually happened when Cyril Ramaphosa was deputy president and when he was head of state.
Look, I think there's an unwillingness on the part of the president really to provide the intricate detail that really should be part and parcel of the accountability exercise that we're going through. And that's really what the Zondo Commission is. You know, even if we don't act fully, and we really need to, but, you know, in politics, sometimes you don't get what you want, there still isn't sufficient accountability on this issue of the broader state capture issue. There are many personalities still within cabinet, still within senior members of the ANC that were intricately involved in similar fashion to President Ramaphosa, who sat in on meetings, who didn't speak up sufficiently. Did they all have this view that they would fight from within? Or were many of the president's comrades and closest comrades within the broader party structures also part of the broader state capture project? And I think these questions remain unanswered. They're not really going to satisfy, I think, the critics of President Ramaphosa. But this exercise in the last 2 days, to me, has been about him trying to recreate a narrative for himself. He's doing this on national television. He's the consummate communicator. He disarms his detractors very efficiently. And I do think that from a communications perspective, he is indeed presenting this narrative of renewal, that it won't happen again, that it was a failure, and we acknowledge that all. But when push comes to shove, I think South Africans are really tired of this exercise. They're tired of the expense here, and they want heads to roll, and they want accountability. And until those issues occur, we're going to find this process to be messy, murky, and perhaps yet another case of, as you've said, kicking the ball down the road for years to come.
That was Professor Booysen's words. He said it looks like there's an exercise of kicking the can down the road. I'm afraid we've run out of time for now, but Daniel, still thank you very much. Prof. Susan Booysen, also thank you very much for your insights. The president will be back in the so-called, I'm using that old cliche, hot seat this afternoon at the state capture inquiry. Now, he's continuing, of course, giving his testimony before the Commission of Inquiry into State Capture, which is headed by the acting Chief Justice Raymond Zondo. And that's what we are continuing to cover here for you on the midday view. And